You check your phone again, don't you? Waiting for that notification, that opportunity, that breakthrough that will finally change everything overnight. You tell yourself you're being strategic, but deep down you know the truth. You're addicted to the fantasy of easy money, and it's slowly killing your soul. I am Solomon, and I was the richest man who ever lived. I had everything you dream of having, and I'm here to tell you something that will disturb you deeply. That hunger you feel for quick wealth, for shortcuts, for instant transformation, it's not ambition. It's a curse disguised as a blessing, and I fell into it harder than anyone in history. You see others posting about their overnight success, their sudden windfalls, their effortless riches, and something inside you burns with envy. You want to believe there's a secret door, a hidden method, a way to skip the line. But what you don't see is what that easy money does to the person who receives it. What it did to me, here's what I discovered after building an empire and losing my soul in the process. Easy money doesn't just disappear. First, it seduces you into believing you're special. Then it corrodes every principle you once held sacred. Finally, it destroys you, because wealth without character is like building a mansion on quicksand. But there's another way, a way that transforms you into the kind of person who doesn't just attract wealth, but becomes worthy of keeping it. The kind of person who builds generational legacy instead of chasing temporary highs. This isn't another get-rich-quick scheme. This is about becoming someone completely different. Someone who understands that real prosperity flows from wisdom, not from shortcuts. Someone who builds slowly, deeply, and permanently. The next few minutes will either wake you up or leave you exactly where you are. Still scrolling, still hoping, still trapped in the cycle of easy money addiction. The choice is yours, but I warn you, once you understand what I'm about to share, you can never go back to the person who believed in shortcuts. If you're ready to break free from the curse that has destroyed more lives than poverty ever could, then stay with me. And if this message resonates with something deep in your chest, something you've been trying to ignore, then subscribe now. Because what comes next will challenge everything you thought you knew about wealth, success, and what it truly means to be rich. Number 1. The illusion of easy money as an initial trap. You wake up every morning with that familiar ache in your chest, don't you? That hollow feeling that whispers you're not enough, that you're falling behind, that somehow life has passed you by while others seem to effortlessly climb mountains of success. And then it appears like a mirage in the desert of your discontent. Easy money. The promise that everything can change overnight, that your pain can be erased with a single transaction, a lucky break, a perfect opportunity. I know this ache intimately. I am Solomon, and I have seen this trap claim more souls than war, famine, or plague combined. The illusion of easy money is not just about coins or gold. It is about the desperate human need to believe that our deepest wounds can be healed without the agony of true growth. Listen to me carefully. Easy money presents itself wearing the mask of salvation, but it is the cruelest deceiver that has ever walked among mortals. It promises to fill the void inside you, the one that keeps you awake at night, the one that makes you feel inadequate when you see others succeed. It whispers sweet lies, that you can bypass the struggle, skip the learning, avoid the transformation that real prosperity demands. Picture a man dying of thirst in an endless desert. The sun beats down mercilessly, and his throat burns like fire. Suddenly, he sees an oasis shimmering in the distance, promising cool water and shade. But as he stumbles toward it, spending his last reserves of strength, the mirage vanishes, leaving him more desperate than before. This is the exact nature of easy money. It appears when you are most vulnerable, when your need is greatest, when your judgment is clouded by desperation. I once knew a young merchant who inherited a small fortune from his father. His father had built that wealth grain by grain, sacrifice by sacrifice, over 30 years of honest trade. But the son saw only the end result, not the character that created it. He believed the money itself held magic, that it could transform his life without transforming him. Within 2 years, he had doubled his inheritance through what seemed like miraculous investments. He felt chosen, special, touched by divine favor. But easy money is like a drug that demands ever higher doses. The initial high becomes the baseline, and what once felt extraordinary becomes ordinary. The merchant began taking greater risks, making bigger bets, convinced that his streak of luck was actually skill. He surrounded himself with flatterers who praised his genius while emptying his purse. He bought palaces to silence his insecurity, threw lavish parties to feel important, and pursued every pleasure to numb the growing anxiety that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as special as his fortune suggested. The trap had been perfectly set. Easy money had given him everything he thought he wanted, but it had taught him nothing about how to keep it, how to grow it responsibly, or how to become the kind of person worthy of sustaining true wealth. More dangerously, it had convinced him that external abundance could heal internal emptiness. Here is the philosophical truth that will either liberate you or disturb you profoundly. Easy money is not really about money at all. It is about our refusal to face ourselves honestly. It is about our desperate attempt to shortcut the painful but necessary process of becoming who we need to become. When you chase easy money, you are not chasing wealth. You are running from the work of transformation. The merchant I spoke of lost everything within 5 years of his father's death. But the real tragedy was not the money he lost. It was the man he never became. Easy money had robbed him of the opportunity to develop wisdom, patience, discernment, and character. It had given him the external appearance of success while leaving his soul bankrupt. This is why easy money is the cruelest trap ever devised. It promises to solve your problems while ensuring you never develop the strength to solve them yourself. It offers to fill your emptiness while creating deeper caverns of need within you. It appears to grant your wishes while destroying your capacity to earn what you truly deserve. The turning point comes when you realize that every shortcut is actually a long cut in disguise. Every attempt to bypass the process of growth delays your real success. Every time you reach for easy money, you are choosing temporary relief over permanent transformation. You are trading your birthright as a creator for the illusion of being chosen by luck. But there is hope, and it lies in a fundamental shift of understanding. Instead of asking, "How can I get rich quick?" begin asking, "Who do I need to become to deserve lasting prosperity?" Instead of seeking opportunities to make easy money, seek opportunities to make yourself worthy of real wealth. Instead of trying to heal your pain with external abundance, commit to the inner work that will make external abundance a natural expression of who you are. The antidote to this trap is brutal honesty about why you want wealth in the first place. Are you seeking money to prove something to others? To feel important? To numb some deep pain? To gain control over an uncertain world? If so, no amount of money, easy or otherwise, will ever be enough. But if you seek wealth as a tool to serve others, to create value, to build something meaningful that outlasts your lifetime, then you have already begun to escape the trap. Remember this: easy money will always remain a mirage, because the very desire for ease reveals an unwillingness to grow. And without growth, there can be no true prosperity, only the exhausting cycle of getting and losing, winning and failing, hoping and despairing. Break free from this cycle by embracing the only path that leads to real wealth: the slow, difficult, transformative journey of becoming someone worthy of keeping what they earn. Number 2. The hidden curse of shortcuts. There is a poison running through the veins of this generation, and its name is the belief in shortcuts. You feel it, don't you? That burning impatience when you see the long road ahead, that desperate hunger to skip steps, to find the secret passage, to discover the hidden method that others have missed. You tell yourself you're being smart, efficient, strategic. But I am here to reveal the terrible truth. Every shortcut you take is not moving you closer to your destination. It is moving you further from the person capable of reaching it. I am Solomon, the man who had access to every shortcut imaginable. Kings brought me tribute without conquest. Gold flowed to me without mining. Wisdom was granted to me without decades of study. And I am here to warn you that shortcuts are not gifts from the universe. They are curses disguised as blessings, and they corrupt everything they touch. The hidden curse begins with a lie that sounds like wisdom. Why work harder when you can work smarter? Why take years when you can take months? Why struggle when you can simply position yourself correctly? These questions seem reasonable, even intelligent, but they contain a fatal flaw. They assume that the destination is separate from the journey, that what you get matters more than who you become in getting it. Imagine a young warrior who desires to become the greatest swordsman in the kingdom. He could spend years training his body, disciplining his mind, learning patience, developing honor, and slowly mastering his craft. Or he could seek out a magic sword that grants instant skill to whoever wields it. The shortcut seems obviously superior. Why endure pain and uncertainty when you can have guaranteed results immediately? But here is what the warrior cannot see. The years of training don't just create skill with a blade. They forge character, resilience, wisdom, and the kind of deep confidence that can only come from knowing you have earned your abilities. The magic sword grants the skill, but leaves the soul untouched. And a skilled swordsman with the soul of a coward will always fall to a moderately skilled fighter with the heart of a true warrior. This is the hidden curse of shortcuts. They give you the appearance of success while robbing you of the substance that sustains it. They offer you the fruit while withering the roots. They promise to make you powerful while actually making you fragile. I have watched this curse destroy countless lives in ways both obvious and subtle. There was a brilliant young scribe who discovered he could copy the work of ancient masters and present it as his own. His reputation grew quickly. He was invited to the finest courts, and gold flowed into his coffers. The shortcut worked perfectly until the day he was asked to create something original. He had developed skill in copying, but had never learned to think. The shortcut had given him wealth and fame, but had stolen his ability to create genuine value. There was a merchant who learned that certain officials could be bribed to overlook taxes and regulations. His profits soared while his competitors struggled under the burden of honest business. The shortcut seemed brilliant until those same officials demanded higher bribes, then began blackmailing him, then eventually betrayed him to his competitors. The shortcut had not just corrupted his business, it had corrupted his judgment, his relationships, and ultimately his entire life. The philosophical truth you must understand is this: shortcuts don't just corrupt your actions, they corrupt your thinking. When you believe that preparation can be bypassed, you stop preparing. When you believe that discipline can be avoided, you stop developing discipline. When you believe that integrity is optional, if you can find the right angle, you stop building integrity. The shortcut mentality becomes a virus that infects every area of your life. But the deepest curse is how shortcuts change your relationship with difficulty itself. Life will always present challenges, obstacles, setbacks, and periods of struggle. These are not punishments to be avoided. They are the resistance training of the soul, the necessary friction that transforms potential into power. When you habitually seek shortcuts, you begin to see difficulty as evidence that you're doing something wrong, instead of evidence that you're doing something meaningful. Consider the difference between two men climbing the same mountain. One takes the winding path, step by careful step, building strength and endurance, learning to read the terrain, developing the wisdom to navigate safely. The other searches for shortcuts, looking for easier paths, hoping to reach the summit without the struggle. The first man not only reaches the top but becomes the kind of person capable of climbing even higher mountains. The second man, even if he finds his shortcuts, arrives at the summit unchanged and unprepared for the greater challenges that await. Here is where the curse becomes truly hidden. It convinces you that time saved is value gained. But this is the opposite of truth. Time invested in proper preparation is never wasted. It compounds. Every hour spent building genuine skill makes the next hour more productive. Every day spent developing character makes you more capable of handling greater challenges. Every month spent learning patience makes you less likely to make the costly mistakes that impatience always produces. The turning point comes when you realize that the shortcut mentality is actually the longest path to real success. Every corner you cut creates weakness in the foundation. Every step you skip creates a gap in your abilities. Every principle you compromise creates instability in your character. These gaps and weaknesses don't disappear. They accumulate, compound, and eventually create catastrophic failure at the moment when you most need stability. But understanding the curse is only the beginning. Breaking free requires a fundamental shift in how you measure progress. Instead of asking, "How fast can I get there?" begin asking, "How thoroughly can I prepare?" Instead of seeking the easiest path, seek the path that will make you strongest. Instead of trying to avoid difficulty, embrace it as the price of genuine transformation. The antidote to the curse of shortcuts is the wisdom of seasons. A farmer who plants in spring does not curse the months of waiting until harvest. He understands that growth requires time, that roots must deepen before fruit can appear, that patience is not delay but investment. Apply this wisdom to your own life. See the time required for proper development not as a burden, but as the natural order that creates lasting value. Remember this truth: there are no shortcuts to any place worth going. Every attempt to bypass the process is actually a detour that leads away from your destination. The path of integrity, discipline, and patient building may seem longer, but it is the only path that leads to success you can keep. Choose the long road and discover that it was actually the shortest path to becoming who you were meant to be. Number 3. Examples of destruction caused by easy money. You think you know destruction, but you have never witnessed the particular horror of watching a soul decay from the inside while surrounded by gold. I have seen kingdoms fall, witnessed empires crumble, watched generations of legacy vanish in the span of a heartbeat, but nothing, absolutely nothing, compares to the methodical devastation that easy money brings to the human heart. Let me show you the faces of this destruction, the real people whose stories serve as warnings that echo through eternity. I am Solomon, and these are not parables or metaphors. These are the actual consequences I witnessed when fortune flows to those unprepared to contain it. These are the tombstones of potential, marked with the names of those who had everything and lost themselves completely. Let me tell you about Prince Adonijah, the son of a great king who inherited a kingdom he never learned to govern. His father had spent 40 years building alliances, understanding the delicate balance of power, learning when to show mercy and when to enforce justice. But Adonijah saw only the crown, the palace, the tribute that flowed from distant lands. He believed the throne granted wisdom rather than requiring it. Within 3 years of his coronation, he had destroyed relationships that took decades to build. He spent the treasury on monuments to his own greatness while the infrastructure crumbled. He appointed friends instead of capable administrators, confused loyalty with competence, and believed that his inherited authority could substitute for earned respect. When neighboring kingdoms sensed weakness, they struck. The kingdom that had stood for generations was conquered in a single season, not because of military might, but because easy power had rotted the foundation from within. But Adonijah's story is gentle compared to what I witnessed in the house of merchant Bildad. This man had built a trading empire through 30 years of careful partnerships, honest dealing, and patient reinvestment. His 3 sons grew up surrounded by wealth, but they never witnessed the character that created it. They saw only the results, the fine clothes, the respect their father commanded, the ease with which gold flowed through their household. When Bildad died, his sons divided the business equally, but they had inherited money without inheriting the wisdom to sustain it. The eldest son, convinced that his father had been too conservative, began making increasingly aggressive investments. He reasoned that since their wealth had grown steadily under his father's management, it could grow even faster under his more ambitious approach. Within 2 years, he had borrowed against the family's assets to fund speculative ventures in distant lands. When those ventures failed, the debt consumed not just his portion but threatened the entire family legacy. The middle son saw his brother's mistakes and chose a different path, but one equally destructive. He decided to preserve their wealth by avoiding all risk, converting everything to gold and hiding it away. But money that is not working dies slowly, eroded by time and circumstance. He became so obsessed with protection that he refused profitable opportunities, alienated long-term partners, and gradually isolated the family from the network of relationships that had sustained their success. His portion dwindled not through loss but through paralysis. The youngest son chose the most seductive destruction of all. He saw his father's wealth as permission to live without purpose. He threw elaborate parties, surrounded himself with entertainers and flatterers, and pursued every pleasure imaginable. He told himself he was enjoying life, celebrating the family's success, living the freedom his father's work had purchased. But easy money had made him a slave to appetite, and appetite is a master that demands ever greater tribute. Each pleasure became emptier than the last, requiring more exotic experiences, more expensive distractions, more elaborate entertainment to achieve the same temporary relief from his growing emptiness. Within 7 years of Bildad's death, the family fortune was gone. But the real tragedy was not the lost gold, it was the lost men. 3 sons who could have built upon their father's legacy had instead become cautionary tales. Easy money had not enriched them. It had robbed them of the opportunity to develop character, wisdom, and the deep satisfaction that comes from creating value rather than merely consuming it. I watched similar destruction in the court of King Jehoash, a ruler who inherited a peaceful kingdom and abundant treasury. His grandfather had won independence through strategic warfare and careful diplomacy. His father had built prosperity through just governance and wise investment. But Jehoash had never faced adversity, never experienced the uncertainty that teaches judgment, never learned the patience required for long-term thinking. He became obsessed with immediate pleasure, converting national resources into personal indulgence. He built pleasure gardens while the army's equipment rusted. He imported exotic luxuries while the roads fell into disrepair. He rewarded flattery while punishing honest counsel. The easy power he inherited had made him deaf to wisdom and blind to consequence. When crisis eventually came, he had no reserves of character to draw upon. The advisors who might have guided him had been driven away. The military that might have protected him had been weakened by neglect. The people who might have supported him had been impoverished by his selfishness. The kingdom fell not to superior enemies but to its own inner decay. Easy money had created easy power, and easy power had bred the arrogance that guaranteed destruction. But perhaps the most heartbreaking example was a young woman named Miriam, the daughter of a successful goldsmith. Her father had built his reputation through meticulous craftsmanship, honest pricing, and treating every customer with dignity regardless of their station. Miriam had grown up comfortable but not extravagant, loved but not spoiled. Then her father struck a vein of pure gold in a mine he had purchased as a long-term investment. Overnight, the family's wealth multiplied tenfold. Miriam, who had been learning the family trade and developing her own modest skills, suddenly found herself one of the richest women in the city. Marriage proposals flooded in from suitors who had never noticed her before. Invitations arrived to social gatherings she had never been considered worthy to attend. The easy money had opened doors that her character had not yet grown strong enough to handle. She abandoned her apprenticeship, convinced that wealth made skill unnecessary. She chose suitors based on their ability to entertain her rather than their character or capability. She began spending lavishly to maintain her new social position, competing with other wealthy families in displays of extravagance. The easy money had taught her that she was special, chosen, deserving of luxury without effort. But money without wisdom is like water in a cracked vessel. It flows out as quickly as it flows in. Miriam's spending exceeded even her new wealth. Her chosen husband proved to be interested only in her fortune. Her new social circle vanished the moment her resources began to dwindle. Within 5 years, she had not only lost the windfall, but had spent her original inheritance as well. Easy money had robbed her of the patience to develop genuine skills, the wisdom to choose worthy companions, and the humility to live within her means. The philosophical truth revealed in these stories is both simple and terrifying. Easy money exposes and amplifies whatever is already broken within us. It does not corrupt good character. It reveals the absence of character. It does not create weakness. It exposes weakness that was already present but hidden by necessity. It does not make people evil. It gives them the power to act on impulses that poverty had kept in check. Here is the turning point you must understand. These were not bad people who deserved destruction. They were ordinary people who received extraordinary resources without the extraordinary character required to steward them properly. Easy money placed them in situations that demanded wisdom they had never developed, tested them with pressures they had never experienced, and offered them choices they were unprepared to make wisely. The antidote is not to fear money or avoid success. The antidote is to ensure that your character grows at least as fast as your resources, that your wisdom deepens at least as quickly as your wealth increases, that your sense of purpose strengthens at least as much as your power expands. Build yourself into someone worthy of the success you seek, and success will become a blessing rather than a curse. Seek wealth before character, and wealth will destroy everything it touches, including you. Number 4. Solomon's personal learning. I need you to understand something that will shake you to your core. I am Solomon, the man who had everything your heart desires, and I am about to reveal the most painful truth of my existence. I fell into the same trap I am warning you about. Yes, I was given divine wisdom. Yes, I built the greatest kingdom the world has ever seen. But I also learned, through agony that still echoes in my soul, that external abundance without internal maturity is not a blessing, but a sophisticated form of torment. Picture the scene: 700 wives and 300 concubines, each one chosen for beauty, status, or political advantage. Palaces that took decades to build, filled with treasures from every corner of the earth. Banquets that lasted for days, entertainment that cost more than entire kingdoms possessed. I could command anything, experience anything, possess anything. And here is what no one tells you about having everything. It reveals the terrifying emptiness of everything. The first revelation came slowly, like a poison that takes years to show its symptoms. Each new pleasure delivered less satisfaction than the last. The first palace was magnificent, filling me with wonder and pride. The second was merely impressive. By the 10th, I walked through halls of gold and cedar with the same emotion I might feel walking through a grain storage room. The beauty was still there, objectively speaking, but my capacity to be moved by it had withered away. I remember the exact moment I understood the curse. I was reclining on a couch made from ivory and overlaid with gold, eating delicacies prepared by the finest chefs in the kingdom, surrounded by musicians playing melodies that had taken months to compose, while the most beautiful women in the world danced for my entertainment. And I felt nothing, absolutely nothing. I had reached the pinnacle of human pleasure, and it felt like ashes in my mouth. But this was not the deepest horror. The deepest horror was the realization of why the pleasures had become empty. Easy abundance had not filled the holes in my soul. It had exposed them and made them larger. Every insecurity I had ever felt was magnified by the knowledge that even unlimited resources could not heal it. Every fear I had carried was amplified by the understanding that no amount of external power could eliminate it. Every pride wound I harbored was infected by the constant need to prove that I deserved what I had been given so effortlessly. Let me be brutally honest about what easy wealth did to my character. It made me suspicious of everyone, because I could never be certain whether people loved me or my resources. It made me lazy in relationships, because I began to believe that my status and wealth should be enough to earn loyalty without investment of genuine care. It made me impatient with difficulty, because I had grown accustomed to having obstacles removed by the power of my position rather than overcome by the strength of my character. The philosophical truth that emerged from my experience is this: easy money reveals what is already broken within us, and then breaks it further. I had always struggled with pride, but poverty had kept it in check. Unlimited wealth gave my pride unlimited fuel. I had always battled insecurity, but necessity had forced me to develop coping mechanisms. Easy abundance removed the necessity, leaving me defenseless against my own doubts. I had always been prone to seeking validation through external means, but limited resources had forced me to find some validation internally. Unlimited external resources completely atrophied my ability to validate myself. The curse deepened with every attempt to escape it. When pleasure failed to satisfy, I pursued greater pleasure. When luxury became mundane, I invented new forms of extravagance. When entertainment bored me, I imported performers from distant lands who practiced arts I had never seen. But each escalation brought diminishing returns, and soon even the most exotic experiences felt routine. I was trapped in a prison made of gold, and every bar had been forged by my own choices. The most devastating realization came when I understood that my wealth had not just failed to heal my inner wounds, It had prevented them from healing naturally. Pain, when faced honestly, teaches wisdom. Struggle, when endured with courage, builds strength. Limitation, when accepted with grace, develops creativity and gratitude. But easy money had protected me from pain, eliminated struggle, and removed all limitations. In trying to spare me from difficulty, it had robbed me of the very experiences that create genuine character. I began to see how this dynamic had infected every area of my life. My marriages were not relationships but collections. I had acquired wives like I acquired gold or art, appreciating their beauty but never developing the patience, sacrifice, and mutual growth that create real love. My friendships were not bonds but transactions. People served me not because they cared about me but because I could benefit them. And I accepted this arrangement because it was easier than earning genuine affection. Even my relationship with wisdom became corrupted. God had granted me understanding that took others decades to develop, but receiving it without struggle made me value it less than I should have. I began to see wisdom as another possession rather than a sacred trust. I used it to impress others rather than serve them, to demonstrate my superiority rather than contribute to their growth. Easy wisdom, like easy money, had made me arrogant rather than humble. The turning point came when I realized that every blessing in my life had become a burden because I had not grown into someone worthy of receiving it properly. The wealth that could have funded great works of mercy had been spent on monuments to my ego. The wisdom that could have brought justice to the oppressed had been used to rationalize my own excess. The power that could have protected the vulnerable had been employed to eliminate any challenge to my comfort. But here is where grace entered the story, and where hope exists for anyone who recognizes themselves in my failures. The pain of emptiness, when fully felt and honestly acknowledged, becomes the beginning of redemption. The recognition that external abundance cannot heal internal poverty becomes the first step towards seeking what can. The understanding that easy money corrupts becomes the foundation for choosing difficult growth. I learned that real satisfaction comes not from having what you want, but from becoming someone worthy of what you have. I discovered that genuine security comes not from eliminating all challenges, but from developing the character to handle any challenge. I understood that true wealth lies not in the accumulation of possessions, but in the cultivation of wisdom, love, and purpose. The practical application of this revelation transformed how I approached every aspect of life. Instead of seeking easier ways to acquire more, I began seeking harder ways to become better. Instead of using my resources to avoid difficulty, I began using them to serve others who were facing difficulties I could help alleviate. Instead of pursuing pleasure for its own sake, I began pursuing activities that created value for future generations. Remember this above all: if you are seeking wealth to fill an emptiness within you, no amount of money will ever be enough. But if you develop the character to handle wealth properly, even modest resources become tools for extraordinary impact. Fix what is broken inside you before pursuing what is lacking outside you, and you will discover that the journey toward wholeness is itself the greatest treasure you could ever possess. Number 5. Easy money as slavery. You believe freedom looks like never having to worry about money again, don't you? You imagine liberation as the moment when you can buy anything, go anywhere, do whatever pleases you without checking your account balance. But I am about to shatter that illusion with a truth so devastating it will change how you view wealth forever. I am Solomon, and I have lived in the golden cage of easy money. I am here to tell you that nothing enslaves a human soul more completely than wealth they did not earn. True slavery is not when someone else controls your body. True slavery is when you lose the ability to control yourself. And easy money, more than any other force in human history, destroys self-control, self-reliance, and ultimately, the self itself. It promises freedom while forging invisible chains that bind you more securely than iron shackles ever could. The first chain is the chain of dependency. When money comes easily, you never develop the muscles of earning it. You never learn to identify opportunities, solve problems, create value, or navigate the complex relationships that sustain legitimate wealth. You become like a person who has been carried everywhere and never learned to walk. The moment the carrying stops, you discover you are helpless. I watched this happen to a young nobleman who inherited a vast estate from his grandfather. The inheritance included not just gold and land, but also the stewards, managers, and advisors who had built and maintained the wealth for decades. The young man believed he was rich, but he was actually dependent. He had no understanding of how his wealth was generated, no ability to evaluate the competence of his managers, no skills to maintain what he had received. The stewards, recognizing his ignorance, began to enrich themselves at his expense. They presented false reports, diverted profits to their own accounts, and gradually assumed control of decisions that should have been his. Within a decade, he existed as a prisoner in his own palace, signing documents he did not understand, ratifying decisions made by others, maintained in luxury as long as he remained passive and ignorant. This is the insidious nature of easy money slavery. It is comfortable. The chains are made of silk and gold. The prison cell is a palace. The guards wear the faces of servants. But slavery it remains, because the person has lost the ability to function independently, to make their own decisions, to understand their own circumstances, or to protect their own interests. The second chain is the chain of appetite. Easy money teaches you that desire should be immediately satisfied, that waiting is unnecessary, that restraint is for those who cannot afford instant gratification. This seems like freedom, but it is actually the most sophisticated form of bondage ever devised. When you lose the ability to delay gratification, you become enslaved to every impulse, every whim, every momentary craving. I lived this slavery personally. Surrounded by abundance, I developed the habit of satisfying every desire the moment it arose. Hungry? The finest foods appeared instantly. Bored? New entertainments were created on command. Lonely? Beautiful companions were always available. This seemed like the ultimate expression of freedom, but it was actually training in helplessness. When every appetite is instantly fed, the appetite grows stronger rather than being satisfied. Like a muscle that atrophies from lack of use, my ability to endure discomfort, to choose long-term benefit over short-term pleasure, to find satisfaction in simple things, gradually disappeared. I became enslaved to an endless cycle of desire and consumption, each satisfaction creating a larger emptiness that demanded even greater indulgence. The third chain is the chain of fragility. Easy money creates no roots. It sits on the surface of your life like a plant in shallow soil, beautiful but unstable. When storms come, as they inevitably do, there is no foundation to hold steady. You become constantly anxious about losing what you never learned to earn, constantly fearful of changes you do not understand, constantly dependent on circumstances remaining exactly as they are. This fragility breeds a particular kind of paranoia. Everyone becomes a potential threat to your security. Every change in the economic climate becomes a source of terror. Every new person in your life must be evaluated as a potential gold digger or schemer. You end up isolated, suspicious, and trapped in a fortress of your own making, terrified to venture outside the protective bubble that your easy money has created. I remember the exact moment this fragility revealed itself in my own life. Reports came that one of my distant provinces was facing economic difficulty, threatening a small portion of my overall wealth. The logical response would have been to investigate calmly, assess the situation, and take appropriate action. Instead, I found myself consumed with anxiety, unable to sleep, obsessed with scenarios of complete ruin. Easy money had made me rich but powerless, wealthy but weak. The fourth and most devastating chain is the chain of meaninglessness. When wealth comes without effort, it carries no story, no sense of accomplishment, no connection to your identity or purpose. It exists independently of who you are, what you believe, or what you contribute to the world. This disconnection from meaning is perhaps the cruelest aspect of easy money slavery. Human beings are created for purpose, designed to find satisfaction in meaningful contribution, built to derive identity from the positive impact they have on others. Easy money short-circuits this entire system. It provides the benefits of successful contribution without requiring any actual contribution. It grants the status of achievement without demanding any real achievement. The result is a specific kind of depression that no amount of pleasure can cure. It is the depression of unused potential, of wasted capacity, of a life that could have mattered but chose comfort instead. I lived in palaces more beautiful than anything you can imagine, but I walked through them like a ghost, unconnected to my surroundings, unmoved by my accomplishments, unfulfilled by my possessions. The philosophical truth you must grasp is this: freedom is not the absence of constraints. It is the ability to choose your constraints wisely. Real wealth is not the ability to buy anything. It is the wisdom to choose what is worth having. True security is not protection from all difficulty. It is the strength to handle whatever difficulty comes. Easy money enslaves because it eliminates the natural constraints that develop wisdom, removes the healthy resistance that builds strength, and provides artificial security that actually creates fragility. It promises to free you from the normal limitations of human life while actually making you more limited than you were before you had it. The turning point comes when you realize that the discomfort of earning money properly is not a price you pay to get wealth. It is the process that creates the person capable of handling wealth responsibly. The challenges of building something from nothing are not obstacles to overcome. They are the resistance training that develops the character muscles necessary to sustain long-term success. But there is hope, and it lies in choosing the harder path while you still can. If you already have easy money, use it as a tool to develop the capabilities you missed when you received it. If you are still seeking wealth, commit to earning it through value creation, problem solving, and service to others. If you are tempted by shortcuts, remember that every shortcut is actually a longer route to the person you need to become. The antidote to easy money slavery is simple but not easy. Develop the habit of earning what you receive, creating value equal to what you consume, and finding your identity in what you contribute rather than what you possess. Choose the difficult path of growth over the comfortable path of dependency, and discover that true freedom comes not from having unlimited resources, but from becoming an unlimited person. Break the golden chains while you still remember what it feels like to be free. Number 6. The contrast with wealth built with purpose. Stand with me for a moment on the edge of two different worlds. In one, I will show you the brittle magnificence of easy money, glittering like morning frost that vanishes with the first ray of sun. In the other, I will reveal the deep-rooted strength of wealth built with purpose, growing like an ancient oak that has weathered countless storms and still reaches toward heaven. The contrast between these two forms of prosperity will either inspire you to greatness or reveal how far you have wandered from the path of true abundance. I am Solomon, and I have witnessed both forms of wealth in their full expression. I have seen the castles built on sand and the fortresses carved into living rock. The difference between them is not measured in gold or silver, but in the character of those who build them and the legacy they leave for generations yet unborn. Wealth built with purpose begins differently than easy money. It starts not with an opportunity but with a problem that needs solving, not with a shortcut but with a vision that demands service, not with personal need but with a recognition of how one's unique abilities can contribute to something larger than oneself. This kind of wealth grows slowly, like a seed planted in fertile soil, drawing nutrients from difficulty, sending roots deep into the bedrock of principle. Let me tell you about master craftsman Bezalel, a man I knew who embodied this approach to prosperity. He did not begin by seeking wealth at all. He began by falling in love with the art of metalworking, captivated by the transformation of raw ore into objects of beauty and function. For years, he worked as an apprentice, then a journeyman, perfecting his skills not because he expected immediate reward, but because excellence itself was its own satisfaction. When Bezalel finally opened his own workshop, his first priority was not profit but quality. He chose projects that challenged his abilities, even when easier contracts would have been more immediately profitable. He invested in better tools, spent extra time on details that others might overlook, and turned away customers who wanted quick work rather than quality work. His early years were financially lean, but they were rich in learning, growth, and the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you are becoming the best version of yourself. The wealth that eventually flowed to Bezalel was completely different in nature from easy money. It was earned wealth, rooted in genuine value creation. Every piece of gold he received represented a problem solved, a need met, a beauty created. His customers did not pay him because they had to, but because what he offered was genuinely worth more than what they gave in return. His success was not dependent on luck, connections, or favorable circumstances, but on his ability to consistently deliver exceptional value. But here is what made Bezalel's wealth truly different. It compounded interest, not just financially, but personally and socially. Every project made him more skilled. Every satisfied customer became a source of referrals. Every challenge overcome increased his confidence and capability. His reputation grew because it was built on substance. His wealth increased because it was supported by ever-growing competence. His security strengthened because it was founded on his ability to create value rather than on the continuation of favorable external circumstances. The contrast with easy money becomes most apparent when crisis strikes. I watched what happened when an economic downturn affected both Bezalel and a young merchant who had inherited great wealth. The merchant panicked as his investments lost value, desperately trying to preserve what he had by avoiding all risk. He hoarded his remaining resources, stopped all expenditures, and waited for conditions to improve. But easy money had taught him no skills for adapting, creating, or adding value during difficult times. He could only wait and hope, growing poorer and more anxious with each passing month. Bezalel faced the same economic challenges, but his response was completely different. His years of purposeful wealth building had developed in him the ability to see opportunity within crisis, to adapt his skills to changing needs, to create value even when resources were scarce. As luxury spending decreased, he shifted to creating essential items. As materials became expensive, he developed techniques for achieving beautiful results with less costly materials. Instead of being a victim of circumstances, he became a solution to the problems those circumstances created. The philosophical foundation that separates these two approaches to wealth is the relationship between being and having. Easy money focuses on having without being. It seeks to accumulate resources without developing the person who must steward those resources. Purposeful wealth building focuses on being first, trusting that the right having will naturally flow from becoming the right person. It invests in character development as the foundation for financial development. This creates a fundamentally different relationship with money itself. Easy money sees wealth as an end goal, the prize that validates the person who receives it. Purposeful wealth sees money as a tool, a means of expanding one's ability to serve, create, and contribute. Easy money asks, how much can I get? Purposeful wealth asks, how much value can I create? Easy money measures success by accumulation. Purposeful wealth measures success by impact. The long-term consequences of these different approaches become clear when you examine what they produce across generations. Easy money rarely survives the first generation that receives it because it creates no institutional knowledge, no established processes, no sustainable value creation systems. It is like a beautiful garden that requires constant external irrigation. When the water stops flowing, everything dies. Purposeful wealth, built through consistent value creation and character development, tends to compound across generations. The wisdom that created it gets passed down along with the resources. The systems that sustain it become part of family culture. The principles that guide it become institutional memory. It is like a garden with deep roots that tap into underground springs, capable of surviving drought and even producing more beauty in difficult seasons. But the most profound difference is the effect on the person who builds or inherits each type of wealth. Easy money diminishes its possessor, making them less capable, less confident, less connected to their own abilities. It creates dependency, anxiety, and a sense of fraudulent success. Purposeful wealth enlarges its possessor, making them more capable, more confident, more aware of their ability to create value. It creates independence, security, and authentic satisfaction. The turning point in understanding this contrast comes when you realize that the method of acquiring wealth determines not just how much you get, but who you become in the process of getting it. Easy money promises to make you rich, but actually makes you poor in character, wisdom, and capability. Purposeful wealth building may make you financially wealthy more slowly, but it makes you rich as a human being in the process. Here is the practical application. Begin now to shift your focus from having to being. Instead of asking, how can I get more money? Ask, how can I create more value? Instead of seeking opportunities to acquire, seek opportunities to contribute. Instead of measuring your progress by your net worth, measure it by your net growth. Instead of chasing wealth that comes from outside your character, develop wealth that springs from within your character. The path of purposeful wealth building requires patience, discipline, and faith in the process. It demands that you invest in yourself before expecting returns from others. It requires you to see difficulties as development opportunities rather than obstacles to overcome. But it leads to a form of prosperity that enriches not just your bank account but your soul, not just your present but your legacy, not just yourself but everyone whose life you touch. Choose the oak tree path over the morning frost path, and discover that wealth built with purpose is not just money you can keep, but money that keeps building the character of everyone it touches. This is the difference between being rich and being wealthy, between having money and becoming prosperity itself. Number 7. The silent pact with ruin. Every time you choose the shortcut, you are signing a contract written in invisible ink. Every time you reach for easy money, you are shaking hands with a partner whose name you refuse to acknowledge. Every time you prioritize immediate gain over solid construction, you are entering into an agreement that will demand payment in ways you cannot imagine. I am Solomon, and I have seen the terms of this contract revealed in the ruins of countless lives. I am here to warn you that you are not just making choices, you are making covenants with consequences that compound in darkness. The pact is silent because you never consciously agree to its terms. No one wakes up and decides to destroy their life, ruin their relationships, and forfeit their legacy. Instead, the agreement is signed through 1,000 small compromises, each one seeming reasonable, each one appearing to offer more benefit than cost. But every signature on every small compromise is building toward a final payment that will claim everything you value. Listen carefully to how this pact operates. It begins with seduction that feels like wisdom. A voice whispers that you are too smart to do things the hard way, too special to follow the same rules as everyone else, too deserving to wait while others get ahead. The easy opportunity appears at exactly the moment when your patience is thinnest, your need is greatest, your resistance is lowest. The timing is not coincidence. It is strategy. The first signature you provide is the compromise of principle. You tell yourself, it is just this once, just this exception, just until you get on your feet. You rationalize that the end justifies the means, that you will make it right later, that your good intentions offset your questionable methods. But principle, once compromised, becomes progressively easier to compromise again. Each exception sets the precedent for the next exception, until exceptions become the rule. I watched this happen to a judge who was known throughout the kingdom for his integrity. He had built a reputation over decades through careful decisions, thorough investigation, and fair verdicts regardless of the social status of those who appeared before him. But then came a case involving a wealthy merchant who offered a bribe that could solve the judge's family financial problems. The judge reasoned that one small compromise could secure his family's future, and that he would return to full integrity afterward. But that first signature opened a door that could never be completely closed. Word spread quietly that the judge could be influenced under the right circumstances. More offers came, each one easier to accept than the last. The judge told himself he was being selective, only compromising in cases where justice would not be significantly harmed. But each compromise further corrupted his judgment, making him less able to distinguish between acceptable and unacceptable situations. The second signature is the corruption of relationships. Easy money changes how others see you and how you see them. Those who offer easy opportunities are not friends. They are predators who recognize weakness and exploit it for their own benefit. They surround you with false admiration, artificial respect, and temporary loyalty that lasts only as long as you serve their purposes. Meanwhile, the authentic relationships in your life begin to deteriorate as your compromises create distance between who you are becoming and who you used to be. The judge found that his old friends became uncomfortable around him, sensing a change they could not quite identify. His family respected him less, though they enjoyed the improved lifestyle his compromises provided. New associates filled the void, but these relationships were transactional, based on mutual benefit rather than genuine care. He was becoming increasingly isolated within his own life, surrounded by people but connected to no one. The third signature is the destruction of discernment. Easy money dulls your ability to recognize danger, evaluate character, and make wise decisions. When you become accustomed to taking shortcuts, you lose the skill of thorough analysis. When you develop the habit of prioritizing immediate gain, you lose the capacity for long-term thinking. When you practice ignoring principles for convenience, you lose the moral compass that guides good judgment. This is perhaps the most devastating aspect of the pact. It does not just lead you into specific bad decisions, it destroys your ability to make good decisions at all. The judge found that his compromises had affected his judgment in all areas of life. He made poor investments because he had lost the patience for careful analysis. He chose unworthy associates because he had lost the ability to discern character. He created family conflicts because he had lost the wisdom to balance competing priorities. The fourth signature is the acceptance of ever-increasing costs. The pact never demands the final payment immediately. Instead, it extracts increasing installments over time, normalizing higher and higher costs until the final devastation seems like a natural progression. What begins as small compromises grows into major corruption. What starts as occasional exceptions becomes constant rule-breaking. What feels like temporary expedience becomes permanent character defects. The judge's story reached its inevitable conclusion when he was offered a bribe so large that accepting it would require him to reverse a verdict that would free a dangerous criminal. His years of smaller compromises had prepared him for this moment. The voice that had once protested such corruption had been silenced by repeated practice in rationalization. He took the bribe and freed the criminal, who went on to commit violent crimes against innocent people. When the corruption was eventually exposed, the judge lost everything simultaneously: his position, his reputation, his family's respect, his financial security, and his personal freedom, all vanished in a single day. But the real tragedy was not what he lost. It was what he had become. The man who had once embodied integrity had been transformed into someone who could sacrifice public safety for personal gain. The pact had not just taken his possessions, it had taken his soul. The philosophical truth you must understand is that the pact with ruin operates through gradual corruption rather than sudden destruction. It does not announce its presence or make its terms explicit. Instead, it works like a slow poison, seeming beneficial in small doses while accumulating toward a lethal concentration. By the time the symptoms become obvious, the damage is usually irreversible. But here is the hope within the horror. The pact can be broken, but only through total repudiation of its terms. You cannot partially return to integrity. You cannot gradually rebuild character. You cannot slowly restore principles. The break must be complete, immediate, and permanent. You must reject every shortcut, refuse every easy opportunity, and recommit to the difficult path of earned success. The turning point comes when you realize that every choice is actually a choice between two different destinies. One destiny leads to temporary gain followed by permanent loss. The other leads to temporary sacrifice followed by permanent benefit. One path promises easy money but delivers eventual ruin. The other path requires difficult growth but delivers sustainable prosperity. The antidote to the silent pact with ruin is the conscious covenant with character. Instead of unconsciously compromising principles for convenience, consciously strengthen principles regardless of cost. Instead of gradually accepting lower standards, deliberately raise your standards higher. Instead of slowly signing away your integrity, immediately recommit to absolute honesty in all circumstances. Remember this truth: you are already signing one of two contracts with your daily choices. Either you are making a pact with ruin through compromise and shortcuts, or you are making a covenant with character through principle and patience. The signature you provide with each decision determines which contract governs your destiny. Choose wisely, because the final payment will come due, and only one of these contracts leads to a settlement you can afford to make. Number 8. The antidote against the curse of easy money. Now comes the moment that will determine whether everything I have shared with you becomes wisdom or mere information. I have shown you the trap, revealed the curse, exposed the destruction, and unveiled the silent pact that claims so many souls. But knowledge without action is as useless as a sword that is never drawn from its sheath. I am Solomon, and I am about to give you the antidote to the most seductive poison that has ever been offered to humanity. The antidote is not what you expect. You probably hope I will give you a system, a method, a set of rules that you can follow to protect yourself while still pursuing wealth. But the true antidote requires something far more radical: a complete transformation of your relationship with money, success, and your own worth. It demands that you become a different person, not just someone who makes different choices. The first element of the antidote is the cultivation of wisdom before wealth. Most people seek money first and hope wisdom will somehow follow. This is like trying to build a house, starting with the roof. Wisdom must be the foundation upon which all prosperity is built, or the prosperity will eventually collapse under its own weight. But what does it mean to cultivate wisdom before wealth? It means learning to see opportunity where others see problems. It means developing the patience to investigate thoroughly before investing deeply. It means building the character to refuse profitable ventures that would compromise your integrity. It means growing the emotional intelligence to recognize when your desires are leading you away from your principles. Wisdom is not just knowing what to do. It is having the strength to do what you know is right, even when it is difficult or costly. I remember a young merchant who exemplified this approach. When others were rushing into speculative investments that promised immediate returns, he spent months studying market conditions, understanding the underlying factors, and assessing the true risks involved. While others mocked his caution and celebrated their quick profits, he continued his patient analysis. When the speculative bubble eventually burst, destroying fortunes overnight, his careful preparation allowed him to not only protect his assets, but to acquire valuable properties at greatly reduced prices. The second element of the antidote is learning to wait with purpose. Easy money corrupts because it eliminates the necessity of patience, and patience is the virtue that allows wisdom to mature into effective action. But this is not passive waiting, like a person sitting by the road hoping someone will offer them a ride. This is active preparation during periods of apparent inactivity, like a farmer who prepares soil, plants seeds, tends crops, and trusts the natural process of growth to produce harvest in its proper season. Purposeful waiting means using every day to become more skilled, more knowledgeable, more connected to people of character, more clear about your values and objectives. It means investing in yourself when external opportunities are scarce, building relationships when business is slow, studying your field when markets are uncertain. This kind of waiting actually accelerates long-term success because it ensures that when the right opportunity comes, you are prepared to recognize it, evaluate it correctly, and execute it successfully. The third element of the antidote is choosing integrity over advantage in every situation. This sounds simple, but it is the most challenging aspect of the cure, because our culture has been designed to reward compromise and punish principle. You will face countless situations where the ethical choice costs more than the expedient choice, where honesty seems to put you at a disadvantage, where keeping your word requires sacrifice that others would avoid. But here is the profound truth about integrity. It is not just a moral choice, it is a strategic choice. In the short term, integrity may cost you specific opportunities or immediate gains. But in the long term, integrity becomes your most valuable asset because it creates trust, and trust is the foundation of all sustainable business relationships. People will pay premium prices to work with someone they trust completely. They will offer their best opportunities to someone whose word is their bond. They will form long-term partnerships with someone who has proven they will not compromise ethics for advantage. The fourth element of the antidote is developing the habit of creating value before capturing profit. Easy money seduces because it promises to let you benefit without contributing, to receive without giving, to profit without serving. But sustainable prosperity flows in the opposite direction. The more value you create for others, the more prosperity flows back to you. This is not just moral philosophy, it is practical economics. Value creation means solving problems that people actually face, improving situations that genuinely need improvement, providing products or services that make life better for those who receive them. When your wealth comes from value creation, It carries no guilt, creates no instability, and generates no resentment from others. Instead, it creates gratitude, builds relationships, and establishes a reputation that becomes more valuable than any single transaction. The fifth element of the antidote is conscious rejection of shortcuts, even when they appear beneficial. This requires developing what I call the spiritual antibody against easy money. Just as your body develops immunity to diseases by recognizing and rejecting harmful substances, your character must develop immunity to easy money by immediately recognizing and rejecting shortcuts to wealth. This means that when someone offers you an opportunity that seems too good to be true, you automatically become more cautious rather than more excited. When you encounter a chance to profit quickly without understanding how the profit is generated, you immediately step back to investigate rather than step forward to participate. When you are presented with ways to gain advantage through means you would not be comfortable explaining publicly, you refuse regardless of how profitable they might be. The sixth element of the antidote is measuring your progress by character development rather than financial accumulation. Easy money corrupts because it teaches you to measure success by having rather than by being. The antidote requires reversing this measurement system. Your primary metric becomes how much you are growing in wisdom, integrity, skill, and contribution to others. Financial results become secondary indicators that confirm you are moving in the right direction, not the primary goals that determine your choices. This creates a completely different relationship with both success and failure. When your money increases but your character is not developing, you recognize this as a warning sign rather than a cause for celebration. When your finances are struggling but you are growing in capability and integrity, you have confidence that you are building towards sustainable success. This measurement system protects you from the anxiety and instability that plague those who measure everything by external results. The seventh and final element of the antidote is establishing a clear sense of purpose that transcends personal financial gain. Easy money is particularly dangerous to people who have no compelling reason to resist it. If your only goal is to become rich, then any path that leads to riches will seem acceptable. But if your goal is to build something that serves others, creates lasting value, and contributes to the well-being of future generations, then you have criteria for evaluating opportunities that go beyond their immediate financial benefits. Purpose acts like a filter that automatically screens out opportunities that conflict with your deeper values and long-term objectives. It gives you the strength to refuse profitable ventures that would not contribute to your mission. It provides the patience to choose slower paths that align with your purpose over faster paths that lead away from it. The practical application of this antidote requires daily discipline and constant vigilance. You must begin each day by recommitting to these principles, not because you have forgotten them, but because the world will constantly pressure you to abandon them. You must end each day by honestly evaluating whether your choices reflected these values, not to punish yourself for failures, but to learn from experiences and strengthen your resolve. Remember this ultimate truth: the curse of easy money can only be broken by someone who no longer wants easy money. As long as you secretly hope for shortcuts, search for loopholes, or dream of avoiding the normal requirements of character development, you remain vulnerable to the curse. But when you genuinely prefer the difficulty of earning prosperity properly to the apparent ease of gaining wealth improperly, you have developed immunity to the most destructive force in human society. The antidote I have given you will transform not just your financial results, but your entire life. It will make you someone who attracts opportunities rather than chasing them. Someone who builds wealth that creates security rather than anxiety. Someone who leaves a legacy of character rather than just money. Choose this path and discover that the cure for easy money is not harder money, but becoming someone for whom all money becomes a blessing rather than a curse. I see you there, sitting in the space between who you have been and who you are becoming. The weight of these truths settles in your chest like seeds planted in fertile soil. You feel the stirring of something ancient awakening within you, the recognition that your relationship with prosperity will never be the same again. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast canyon. On one side lies the glittering mirage of easy wealth, promising everything while delivering nothing lasting. On the other side stretches the solid ground of character-built abundance. demanding everything while delivering treasures that compound across lifetimes. The bridge between these worlds is made of daily choices, small decisions that seem insignificant but carry the weight of destiny. You are no longer the same person who began this journey with me. Something has shifted in the depths of your understanding. The voice that once whispered seductive promises about shortcuts now sounds hollow and desperate. The hunger for immediate gratification has been replaced by a deeper appetite for authentic transformation. You have tasted the difference between having money and becoming prosperity. This awakening cannot be reversed. Once you have seen the trap clearly, you cannot unsee it. Once you understand the true cost of easy money, you cannot unknow it. Once you recognize your own capacity for building lasting wealth through character, you cannot pretend you are powerless again. The path ahead requires companions who understand this deeper wisdom. If you sense that your transformation has only begun, that these insights are calling you towards something greater than you have yet imagined, then stay connected to this journey of becoming. Subscribe not just to continue learning, but to continue growing into someone worthy of the prosperity that awaits those who choose the harder path. Your real education in wealth and character begins now, in the quiet moments between thoughts, where wisdom transforms from knowledge into living truth.